I already filed the paperwork. You can stay in a hotel tonight. My husband said that on a Wednesday. Not after a fight. Not after any warning. He said it the way someone might mention they'd picked up milk on the way home. Calm, almost distracted, like he'd already mentally moved on from the inconvenience of telling me. I was standing in the kitchen doorway, still wearing my coat. I hadn't even set my bag down. We had been married for 7 years. I was 34 years old, and I had no idea what was happening. His name isn't important right now, but I'll call him what I called him for 7 years. My husband. Because that's all he was to me. My husband, my partner. The person I had reorganized my entire life around without thinking twice. I remember staring at him for what felt like a long time. He was sitting at the kitchen island, laptop open, a glass of water next to it. He didn't look up from the screen. "What paperwork?" I asked. "Divorce paperwork." He finally looked at me. His expression was so flat it scared me more than anger would have. "I've been in touch with an attorney for a few weeks. It's already in motion." A few weeks. I stood there trying to understand what was happening in real time, which is something you cannot actually do when the ground disappears beneath you. You think you're processing it, but you're not. You're just floating above it, watching yourself stand in your own kitchen in your work coat, holding a canvas grocery bag with a half-used rotisserie chicken inside it, being told your marriage is over. "I don't understand," I said. "I know," he said. And he looked back at his screen. That was it. That was the whole conversation. I want to back up and tell you about the 7 years before that Wednesday. Not because I need you to feel sorry for me. I don't, not anymore, but because you need to understand what I walked into that kitchen believing, and what I walked out of it knowing. My husband and I met when I was 26. I was working as a graphic designer at a small firm in Atlanta. He was a sales director at a tech company, charming and confident in a way that made rooms slightly tilt toward him. We dated for 2 years, got engaged, and got married in a backyard ceremony in my parents' house in Tennessee. My mother cried. His mother gave a toast. We danced until 11 and drove to Savannah for our honeymoon because we both loved old cities with good food. For the first few years, things were good. Not perfect. Nothing is. But genuinely good. We bought a townhouse in the suburbs. We adopted a dog, a scruffy terrier mix named Biscuit, which my husband had suggested and then proceeded to absolutely adore. I freelanced more to supplement my income. He got promoted twice. We talked about kids in that loose, someday way that couples do when they're happy but not in a hurry. Then something shifted. Around year 5, I could feel it, but I couldn't name it. He started working late. 3 nights a week became 5. He said the company was scaling fast, that Q4 was brutal, that it would calm down. I believed him because I had no reason not to. I made dinner and kept it warm. I learned to sleep without him on the other side of the bed. I told myself this was just a season. His phone became a constant, low-grade anxiety in my chest. He never left it anywhere. It was always face down or screen-locked or tucked in his jacket pocket. When I mentioned it once, lightly, carefully, he told me he'd been dealing with a difficult client situation and needed privacy around it. I nodded. I moved on. I told my sister about it one Saturday afternoon when we were at a farmer's market together. She shrugged and said, "Men get weird when work is stressful. He's probably just overwhelmed." I wanted to believe her, so I did. Looking back, I want to go back and shake myself. The distance had been there for almost 18 months before that Wednesday. Not dramatic. Not explosive. Just a slow and quiet withdrawal. Like water seeping out of a glass through a crack so small, you don't notice until the glass is almost empty. And by the time I noticed, he had already made a decision. He had made it without me. He had made it while I was still showing up, still trying, still making dinner, and folding laundry, and planning a summer trip to Oregon we were apparently never going to take. The night he told me, I drove to a Marriott 12 minutes from our house and checked in at 9 p.m. I sat on the bed with all the lights on and stared at the striped carpet until it blurred. I didn't cry right away. I was too confused for crying. Confusion and grief are different. Confusion is louder, more disorienting. Grief comes later, quieter, and stays much longer. I called my sister but didn't know what to say when she answered. I just told her what happened and then sat there listening to the silence on her end. "Come here," she finally said. "Right now. Come here." I told her I'd come in the morning. I needed to be alone first. That night I went through 7 years in my head. Not obsessively. I want to be clear about that. I wasn't trying to find the moment I failed or the thing I did wrong. I was trying to understand. There's a difference. And by 2 a.m., I had landed somewhere clear. I had done nothing wrong. Something had happened that had nothing to do with me, and I didn't know yet what it was. The next morning, I woke up with one clear thought. I had left something at the house. In the rush of packing, I had thrown things into 2 bags without thinking. I had left behind a box I kept on the top shelf of my closet, a small fireproof lockbox. Inside it was my social security card, my passport, my grandmother's ring, some cash I kept for emergencies, and a folder of financial documents, account statements, insurance policies, a copy of our mortgage paperwork. I couldn't leave that there, especially the financial documents. Something told me, even then, that I might need them. I drove back to the house around 10 in the morning. My husband's car was in the driveway, which surprised me. He was usually at the office by 8. I almost turned around, but I had come for something specific, and I told myself it would take 3 minutes. I'd go in, get the box, and leave. I unlocked the front door with my key. Still my key, still my house, whatever he'd filed, and stepped inside. The first thing I heard was music. Low, soft music from the living room, the kind you put on when you're relaxed and comfortable. Weekend morning music. I stopped in the entryway. Biscuit came skidding around the corner and launched himself at my shins the way he always did, tail spinning like a helicopter blade. I reached down to pet him and stayed very still. Someone was in the living room. My husband said something low, a laugh, and then a woman's voice answered him, familiar in its ease, completely at home. Every nerve in my body registered what was happening before my brain caught up. I walked down the hallway, slowly. Not because I was trying to be quiet, I wasn't, but because my legs felt like they were moving through water. I turned the corner into the living room. She was sitting on my side of the couch. That was the first detail that landed. My side. The left side nearest the lamp, where I always sat with my feet tucked under me. She was sitting there in one of my husband's flannel shirts, holding a mug, legs curled exactly the way I used to curl mine. Like she'd already practiced being comfortable in my space. My husband stood up so fast the mug on the coffee table rattled. "You weren't supposed to be here," he said. I looked at her. She looked at me. Her face went from startled to something harder to read, not quite guilt, not quite defiance. "I forgot something," I said. My voice came out steadier than I expected. He stepped between us like that would help. "This isn't, don't," I said. He stopped. I looked at her again. She was younger than me, maybe late 20s. She had the look of someone who had been told a version of the story that made her the protagonist. "How long?" I asked him. I wasn't even sure I was asking for my sake. It felt more like a reflex. Like you put your hand on a stove and pull it back without deciding to. He didn't answer immediately, which was its own answer. "How long?" I said again. 8 months, he said. I already knew he was lying. Not because I had proof, but because the distance in him had started much earlier than 8 months ago. The math didn't add up, and we both knew it. "Longer," I said. He looked at the floor. "You should go," he said to her quietly. She set down the mug. On my coffee table, with my coasters, next to the throw blanket my mother had given us as a wedding gift, and stood. She grabbed her bag from the floor beside the couch. Didn't look at me. Didn't say anything. Walked past me in the hallway and out the front door. We heard her car back out of the driveway. Then it was just us. 7 years of marriage standing in a living room at 10 in the morning. And I was still in my hotel clothes. And Biscuit had settled onto the rug between us, like he was waiting for someone to explain things to him. "You filed paperwork," I said. "You had an attorney. You planned this." I didn't want it to be messy. I felt something tighten in my chest that wasn't sadness. It was something much colder. Clarity, maybe. "Where's the financial stuff?" I asked. "What?" "Our accounts, the joint accounts, the mortgage documents." Our investment accounts. Where are they? He hesitated 1 second too long. Nothing has changed yet. That word. Yet. I turned and walked into the kitchen. He followed, telling me to wait, to let him explain that things weren't what they looked like. I wasn't listening anymore. I was looking. There was a folder on the counter. Thick, tabbed, the kind you get at an office supply store when you're organizing something you plan to keep. I recognized his handwriting on the tab labels. I opened it. The first page was a summary sheet. Assets, accounts, property values. All of it laid out in columns. His own accounting of what we owned together. Notes in the margins in red ink. Some figures circled. The second section had printouts of bank account histories going back 14 months. One account I didn't recognize. A separate account in his name only that I'd never seen. Regular transfers going back almost a year. The third section was property-related. The townhouse. Its estimated current value. A name and number for a real estate attorney that was different from our divorce attorney. He had been planning this for at least a year. Possibly longer. While I was home with Biscuit and thinking our marriage was going through a rough patch, he had been building an exit. Quietly, methodically. Money, consulting attorneys, constructing a version of the future that I wasn't in. I pulled out my phone. "What are you doing?" he asked. "Documenting this." I photographed every page, every tab, every circled figure and red margin note. He reached for the folder and I stepped back. "You cannot take those," he said. His voice had changed. Something behind the practiced calm shifted. "I'm not taking them. I'm photographing them." I kept shooting. "There's a difference. Those are private. This is still my house," I said. "For now." He went quiet. I finished photographing the folder, then walked to my office. The small second bedroom I used for client work, and got the lockbox from the closet shelf exactly as planned. 3 minutes, I had told myself. It took 8, but I had everything I came for, and more. As I walked back through the living room, I looked at the couch. At the mug she had left on the table. At the throw blanket my mother gave us. I picked up Biscuit, carried him to the front door, and looked at my husband one more time. "You should know," I said, "that what you just showed me in that folder is going to matter very much to my attorney." He didn't say anything. I set Biscuit down. He wasn't mine to take, not yet, and I walked out. I drove directly to my sister's house. She met me at the door, took one look at my face, and didn't ask questions. She just put the kettle on and let me sit at her kitchen table until I was ready to talk. That afternoon, I called my mother. I told her what had happened. She was quiet for a long time, and then she said, "You photograph every document. You talk to a lawyer today. You don't agree to anything until you understand exactly what he's done." My mother was a paralegal for 20 years. She knows things. I was sitting with a family law attorney by 4 o'clock that afternoon. I showed her the photos. She looked at them carefully for a long time without speaking. Then she looked up at me. "He's been moving money for almost a year," she said. "That's financial misconduct during marriage. That changes things significantly." I nodded. I had suspected. But hearing someone say it out loud solidified something in me. I had not imagined it. I had not been paranoid. The knot in my chest that I had been explaining away for a year and a half had been right all along. "I want to protect myself," I said. "That's exactly what we're going to do," she said. What happened in the weeks after that is hard to compress neatly. Because nothing about it was neat. Divorce never is. But here's what I can tell you. My attorney filed an emergency motion related to the financial transfers, the separate account, the systematic movement of joint funds. Under Georgia law, marital assets are subject to equitable distribution, and any attempt to dissipate or conceal them before a divorce filing is taken seriously by the court. His attorney knew this. My husband knew this. That folder on the kitchen counter, the one he had spent months carefully organizing, became one of the most important documents in the case. He had thought he was being thorough. He was. Just not in the way he intended. Friends learned the timeline. His coworkers, who had known us as a couple for years, learned what had actually happened. People who had only heard his version, whatever that version was, started asking questions he couldn't answer comfortably. The story he had been constructing quietly, the one where he had simply grown apart from his wife and moved on, started colliding with the actual timeline of events. His credibility took hits he hadn't anticipated. I won't tell you it was clean or fast or satisfying in any neat way. Divorce is paperwork and waiting and unexpected expenses and legal strategy, and underneath all of it, grief that comes in waves and at strange hours. I cried in my car in a grocery store parking lot at 11 a.m. on a Tuesday. I woke up at 3 in the morning, not knowing where I was for a few seconds. I called my mother too many times. But I also did other things. I found an apartment, a 2-bedroom in a neighborhood I had always liked but never lived in, and I made it mine. I put plants on the windowsill. I bought a couch in a color I chose without consulting anyone. I started running again. Something I had given up in the second year of marriage when our schedules stopped aligning. I went back to therapy. My therapist was direct in a way I appreciated. She told me, during our 3rd session, that I had been practicing a particular kind of self-erasure for years, accommodating, adjusting, making room, and that this was a chance to stop. Not because I had done something wrong by being devoted, but because devotion shouldn't mean disappearing. I thought about that for a long time. The final settlement took 6 months. I will not walk you through every detail. It's long and technical and ultimately hours. But I will tell you this. The court did not look kindly on the financial maneuvering. The transfers were treated as what they were. My attorney was thorough. I ended up with a substantial share of the marital assets, including a buyout settlement for my equity in the townhouse. It was enough to start over without the panic that I had feared. He kept Biscuit initially because of the apartment lease. But 3 months in, he texted to say the dog was not adjusting well and asked if I wanted him. I drove across town on a Saturday morning, and Biscuit ran to me so fast he skidded on the hardwood and crashed into my legs. I cried in the parking lot of his building for 10 minutes, and then drove home with a 16-pound dog on my lap, which is a safety hazard. But I could not bring myself to move him. I also want to tell you about the woman on my couch. I found out about 4 months later that she had ended things with my husband. Somewhere around the time, the legal proceedings got complicated. I don't know the details, and I don't particularly want them. I will say only this. She had believed a version of events that required my husband to have been honest with her. And he had not been. She was not the villain in my story. She was just a person who had been handed a partial picture and told it was the whole thing. My husband ended up in a studio apartment in a part of town he wouldn't have chosen. He changed jobs twice in the year after our divorce. I heard about it through mutual acquaintances who didn't know how to stop sharing information, and I have since learned that my polite response to such information is, "Thanks for letting me know," and nothing further. I am 36 now. Biscuit is sleeping on my couch, the teal one, as I write this. Outside my window is a neighborhood I love. I have a client project due Friday that I'm genuinely excited about. My sister is coming to visit next month. My mother calls every Sunday. I am not going to tell you that being betrayed made me stronger. I don't believe hardship is obligated to make you stronger. Sometimes it just hurts and you carry it, and eventually it gets lighter. That is enough. What I will tell you is this. There was a moment, standing in that living room at 10 in the morning, looking at a woman sitting on my side of the couch in my house. While my husband told me this wasn't what it looked like, there was a moment where I understood, with complete clarity, that I was not going to fall apart. Not because I was tough, not because I had already expected it, but because something in me recognized, even then, that I was looking at an ending that had already happened. He had already left. The only question was whether I would let his exit define where I landed. I didn't. He thought he had planned for every contingency. He had a folder. He had an attorney. He had a timeline. He had a backup life, already warming up on my couch. What he hadn't planned for was that I would come back for that lockbox, that I would see the folder, that I would have a mother who spent 20 years in family law, that I would walk into an attorney's office 4 hours later with photographs of every page. He thought he was taking everything from me. He was wrong. What I walked out of that house with, those photos, my documents, my grandmother's ring, turned out to be more than enough to protect myself. And what I walked away from, the man who had spent a year quietly dismantling our life together while I was still in it, turned out to be less of a loss than he imagined. He lost a wife who showed up every single day for 7 years. I lost someone who had stopped showing up long before he told me. Only one of us had to rebuild from nothing, and it wasn't me.